Yes, yes, yes. Welcome back to another edition, another episode of Go Long Live. I am your host, Barry Long the second, not the first, not the third. I am the second. We are live on CoachellaValley.com, live on today's California.com, live on today's Canada.com. We are all over the Twitterverse, all over the metaverse, all over the universe, all over Facebook. I said Facebook. Facebook. And I hope everyone is having a wonderful, wonderful Tuesday. We had some great wild card action this entire weekend. Last night was not so much of a close contest, but we were treated some good football, and we had some good analysis that we're going to break down with this game. We're also going to talk a little bit of basketball today. We're going to talk Kyrie Irving because we just found out that Kevin Durant is now out with an MCL sprain 4 to 6 weeks. So Rudy and I will break all that down. Without any further ado, let me bring in my main man, my co-host, my guy, Rudy Ramon Reyes. How are you doing, sir?
Hey, man, I'm doing fantastic. How are you, Larry?
I'm doing great, man. I'm doing great.
Larry, very long.
Somebody called me. I was going to say, did he say Larry? Or well, yeah. Somebody called me the other day and said, may I please speak to Larry Bong? I was like, wow. They switched it all.
That was me.
Gary, Larry, Jerry, whatever, Terry, whatever you want to call me. Let's get it cracking, man. But yeah, Rudy, I really want to, real quick, I want to shout out one of our main watchers out there, one of my main viewers, Clyde Buff. He hit me with some feedback, man. Said you were a great fit for the show. Say he loves your energy. Says you're a good looking guy.
I appreciate that. Question mark. That's pretty cool. Thank you so much. I appreciate the feedback. Anything else you guys have, just bring it on. Bring it forward, and we'll certainly talk about it. We'll discuss it here on the show.
And comment comment or here on the live on the feed, and just like these comments, we can pop them up for you, and we can shout you out. Now let's get into it right now. The Rams. It was a pretty good game yesterday that we saw. Early on, we knew that this was going to be a contest between the running game and the running game of the other team. We wanted to see whether or not that the Rams, their weakness was not being able to stop the run in a couple of the games that they lost this week. But we did not see the Cardinals come out and use that to their advantage at all. They only rushed a combined 51 yards. Kyler Murray looked shook all night long. It was just a random night for the Cardinals. They looked terrible. And the game was 34-11. You saw Matt Stafford come up, and they didn't utilize him to the point where he had to throw in high volume. He only threw the ball 17 times, 13 completions, 202 yards, and 2 touchdowns with no interceptions. He protected the ball well. They ran the ball at a high volume, although they didn't run for that many yards. Sony Michel ran the ball 13 times for 58 yards. And then, of course, you had Cam Akers back from that Achilles injury. He ran 17 times for 55 yards. So they ran at a high level, at a high volume. Although they didn't get, either one of them didn't get 100 yards, they still were able to control the pace of that game. And their defense was able to keep Kyler Murray under enough pressure and have him shook enough to the point where there were some couple turnovers, and they were able to get short fields or the pick six that we saw David Long Jr. have as well. So they basically just came out firing on all cylinders. The Cardinals looked terrible. Cliff Kingsbury, every time the camera hit him, he was sweating. He looked bad. Kyler Murray looked terrible after every drive that was unsuccessful. They were able to put 11 points up on the board, but this one felt like a blowout. What were your thoughts on the game, Rudy?
There was a lot of miscues I've seen from Kyler Murray, especially being under center. He's supposed to be that guy. First playoff start, you expected a little bit more out of him, a little, trying to get a little cute in the end zone, but instead of just having a safety, the team, the Rams, came back and just picked that thing off the ground to scoop and score to add an additional amount of salt to the injury that was already labeled the Cardinals. You look at the Band-Aid, look at the top, it said Cardinals, ouch, pour salt here. I mean, it was clearly listed on the Band-Aid. So I can't imagine what the package looked like, but the minute they got into SoFi Stadium, this turned out not to be the Cardinals game whatsoever, not the Cardinals night. Cliff Kingsbury, just absolute just despicable. The lack of enthusiasm that he showed, the type of passion and drive that a coach is supposed to have. Dude, slam a clipboard down on the ground. Do something.
Steve
There
Kerr.
was nothing from him. Yeah, give me something off of the sideline except for this little stoic, non-joker looking face when you can't even tell what the emotions are going through his mind right now. They didn't do a whole lot on the ground. Kyler Murray certainly not able to do it all between Von Miller, Aaron Donald. I mean, they had pressure on Kyler Murray all night long, early and often. And of course, we've seen a scary moment in the third quarter when Budda Baker was hit by Akers. Akers, coming in for the would-be touchdown, ended up getting the score anyway, but Budda Baker in that collision was absolutely horrible. But prayers to Budda Baker. He's good to go. Thumbs up. He was flying in a jet. Of course, couldn't leave with the team, but he left this morning. So, Budda, if you can hear me, good looking out, man. Glad you're doing okay.
Yeah, for sure.
The Rams just consistently made their effort and presence known on basically every single down. That trick play from Odell Beckham downfield, that was absolutely phenomenal. Of course, whenever you watch a post-game interview with Odell Beckham, it's, I realize this, not a great interviewer, not a great interviewee, rather. I don't know if the interview was any good. It looked like to be okay. But at the same token, look, he did his job. He was effective. He played his position to the best of his ability. Matthew Stafford finally getting this one under his belt, but he's very humbled to be in this situation. Don't forget, he came from a poor Lions team that didn't have a lion's share of basically anything, from owning their own division to being able to win, to get out into some type of conference matchup. And when you look at Matthew Stafford and his ability to just throttle that offense, calm everybody down, call the right plays, call the audibles, complete connecting the dots in this game for the Rams, who now are on the road to Tampa Bay to face the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, defending the Super Bowl champions. So this ought to be one of the most fantastic games in the NFC that I can think of in recent memory. Don't forget, Tom Brady is still the GOAT. And until he's outseated by whomever, could be Matthew Stafford. We don't know that yet, but with 6 rings and this game to go, he could be the ultimate greatest of all time, not just the greatest of all time. We could probably name off 50 or 60 of them. But the Rams just dominated, 13-5. Cardinals 11-7. They dropped off 2/3 of the way through last season, albeit now we're into this regular season. Now we're in the playoffs. But Cardinals just certainly did not have an answer for anything that the Rams were doing on either side of the ball, and they were winning in all phases.
Yeah, and that move that Sean McVay makes when he goes to Cabo or whatever, and he gets Matt Stafford, it kind of makes him look like a genius, especially if they continue to win in the playoffs. And the game plan last night kind of felt like one of the game plans that he had for Jared Goff early on in his coaching career, where he limits the run, or he limits the pass plays. He runs at a high dosage with Todd Gurley, and then they hit him with the play action or whatever. But only throwing the ball 17 times yesterday definitely felt like a Jared Goff-ish kind of game plan. And Sean McVay just, when they got lucky with being able to get Sony Michel and get so much production out of him, and get Cam Akers back so quickly from that MCL or from that Achilles injury. But I also like the addition of Odell Beckham Jr. And I think that they are playing with him very, very smart and very wisely, because he is a guy that really likes to get touchdowns, really likes to get some shine. And although they don't use him in the passing game as much as they use Cooper Kupp, at a high volume level, they really do use him a lot in the red zone. And that results in touchdowns. And that's what he wants. He wants touchdowns, and he wants to win. And they seem to be able to keep him happy, keep him in the fold enough to where he is not an issue at all. He's actually an asset. So I think that Sean McVay is just playing this really well. He's pulling the right strings at the right time. And I am definitely excited to see that game between them and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We are going to break that down certainly coming up later on in this week. I am Barry Lund II. He is Rudy Reyes. We are live on CoachellaValley.com, today'scalifornia.com, today'scanada.com. Please comment. We would love to hear from you. Please subscribe to the CoachellaValley.com page and the Today's California page. Now, let's talk about these Cardinals, because it seems like this happened the last 3 years with Cliff Kingsbury. They start off hot. They win a lot of games. Kyler Murray looks good. And then whether or not the defenses start to figure them out, or whether or not they just start to fizzle out, they seem to lose steam at the end of the season, and then, boom, they fall flat on their face. Now, if you're looking at this season as a whole, they started off really hot this season, just like I just said. And now we look at them, they lose a lot down the stretch. And then they do not win the division as they were projected to do earlier on in the season. The Rams took that. And then they lose in the first round. The way their season ended, in your opinion, Rudy, does it mean that the Cardinals' season was a failure?
See, I honestly believe it was a failure before they ever got to the point where they're playing the Rams at SoFi Stadium. And here's why. Kyler Murray, a guy who was designed to come in to give this offense a serious lift, a serious boost, give them a different look. They've had nothing but very tall quarterbacks, We can go back into history. They used to be the Steelers West, with Bruce Arians as their head coach and some familiar faces. They still have Kelvin Beachum, and he's still very effective on that offensive line. But I think Kyler Murray is going to mature. He's going to get better. I don't know that Cliff Kingsbury is the guy for the job of the future with the Arizona Cardinals because, as you stated, Barry, it looks as though he has this high trend of getting up so fast, so high, so quickly, and all of a sudden falling down into the pit of the earth in regards to play calling, situational play calling, offense, as well as special teams to some extent. I mean, they ended up losing this game because they could not produce on the offensive side of the ball, which is absolutely not what Cliff Kingsbury had wanted. But again, and to add to that, the lack of emotion from him, the inability to become connected to the game. I understand you may end up losing this game because early on it looked as though the Rams were going to wax the floor with them. They did anyway. They did despite all of that. But to get something out of your coach to suggest that he cares about what's going on instead of this stoic Joker-looking, face with no smile, with no with
you don't
no
like
ferocity.
his face, do you?
No, it's just absolute stoic. I mean, I can get a better face on a cake on Sunday afternoon from a bakery. I mean, he just does not have the kind of visual for me to look at. This guy has passion. He has drive. This is the coach that we want for the future. And I guarantee you, as exit interviews begin around the NFL, Steelers had theirs this morning and continue to have them throughout the entire day. Don't forget, 32-man roster. Got a lot of people to talk to. And it takes a lot of time. But I guarantee you during exit interviews, they're going to ask you the same very familiar questions that we hear year in and year out. Cornerbacks, who would you like to see stay in the defense? Who would you like to see in the free safety position? And then they start talking about other players we'd like to see. Cam Hayward had that conversation yesterday in regards to, well, I'd rather see a different quarterback. In other words, he doesn't have any love for Mason Rudolph, but he's a defensive guy, so he may not have that. Same conversation as DeAndre Hopkins, who continually gets injured. He has great hands, but what do the great hands do you when your lack of availability is not being available on the sidelines because you're injured, and they don't have a ton of weapons on as far as wide receiver. I know they acquired Zach Ertz. We talked about that before, Barry, but at the end of the day, he's just one guy. You can throw it to James Conner. I think the escapability, based on what I'm looking at from Kyler, is still not quite there yet. He doesn't have that massive amount of protection, but against also decision-making process that we talked about earlier, being in the end zone, flipping a ball forward.
Can't do that. You can't
someone's
do that
going to catch it. You just cannot do that.
He threw it up for grabs.
2 points and call it a day. Do something other than throw the ball into the defense's hands, which is ultimately what happened. I think there'll be some changes on the offensive side of the ball, maybe some acquisitions, or, as I like to say, addition by subtraction.
Okay. Yeah. And he definitely looked shook all night. And, once they started hitting him, he started getting unsure of himself. He wasn't throwing the ball. He was holding on to the ball too much. I mean, it was just terrible. And he did not have DeAndre Hopkins to his defense. His only weapons basically were Zach Ertz and A.J. Green, who had 0 catches. So, I mean, it was just a pedestrian pass game. I think that it was his worst game as a pro so far. And, I think Cliff Kingsbury is safe right now. But next year, if they have the same type of debacle, I feel like he definitely is. It's time for him to go. But they did perform well on the road. And I would give Cliff Kingsbury another chance. Now, let's talk about somebody who really did get fired, and that's Mike Mayok. Mike Mayok, of the GM of the Raiders. We've seen him. He was, of course, very popular, a household name after the Hard Knocks episodes, and the tension that was this between him and Antonio Brown. Of course, they had John Gruden. They had a lot of issues this season. They had John Gruden get fired. Rick Desaccio had to come in and be the interim head coach. They lost Henry Ruggs. They lost Arnett. John Madden passed away. So this franchise as a whole has been through a lot this season. But Mike Mayock being fired as the GM of the Raiders, do you like this move, and why, if you do or you don't?
Well, I look at the Oakland Raiders. We talked about it before. They've had a tumultuous regular season. Vegas, Oakland. I don't know where they're playing at. Maybe LA in the next 10 years. Who knows? They move around a little bit too often. When you look at the Raiders, you think to yourself, Mayock was, he was already 2 years headed out of this job. Yeah. He only acquired his job because he wanted something different. He wanted to get back into being a general manager. He got his opportunity. I think it was better on TV than he was a general manager, but that's
as
my
well
opinion.
as I do.
But when you look at Mayok, it was ultimately a failure. When you move on from your head coach, and typically general managers and head coaches kind of go out one after the other or simultaneously, as it were. But Bisaccia, because he has a familiarity, and as we've stated before, he deserves an opportunity, at least interview for the job, if absolutely nothing else for Bisaccia. And I wish him the best, just in case it doesn't work out to his standard. However, Mike Mayok is a guy who, like I said, does great on TV, did better on TV as a general manager. And once he realized that the storm brewing for John Gruden, aka Chucky, was certainly on the horizon, he backed off. He used softer hands. He said, well, we're going to talk about this at some other point, and relatively nonchalant. And
let's not forget that he might be on some of those emails.
he could very well be, and that investigation, I'm sure, is ongoing, at least at this point. But I think Mayok did that as far as a crowd control during those conversations about John Gruden and why he was released and so on. But I think the organization as a whole needs to create that much better of an image. We talked about Derek Carr. Whether or not he's going to be there next year remains to be seen. He still has 1 year left on his contract. But I think more importantly, the team needs to make the rights and understand where they went wrong. And that comes with rebuilding from the inside out in certain respective positions, from players, coaching positions, and the like. They need a more aggressive defense. They need a pass rusher. They need probably at least 2 pass rushers, which I foresee them kind of pulling the Dallas Cowboy approach at Jerry Jones, going after 4 or 5 D linemen and then shifting whoever out whenever, however. So I think it was a good move for Vegas. Was it an untimely move? Maybe for the Raiders it was untimely, but for Mike Mayok, he was already out the door.
Yeah, and I agree. I thought he should have been gone before this season. Actually, I never really was a believer in Mike Mayok as the GM for this team. I do like him on TV, and I'm sure that he'll end up back on TV. But I thought it was his time to go. Now let's talk about the Bucks and the Eagles game. We didn't get to talk about this yesterday. The Bucks and the Eagles. The Bucks, Tom Brady just seems to be able to get it done no matter what he has at his disposal. He did not have his 2 top running backs, Leonard Fournette or Ronald Jones. Went out there with a guy named Keyshawn Vaughn. We like Keyshawn Vaughn, but it's not Leonard Fournette and Giovanni Bernard. And they both carried the ball 20 times combined for about 100 yards. So he got the production out of them, but he was able to hit Mike Evans. And Mike Evans has been such a security blanket for Tom Brady in all these difficult times with Chris Godwin going down and with losing AB. It just seems like Mike Evans has stepped his game up and elevated his level of play for Tom Brady in the moments that he needs it the most. He had 9 catches for 117 yards and a touchdown. And Tom Brady, man, just seems to just be always able like this, just smooth and just steady and keeping that team focused and locked in, and they just seem to continue to win. And on the other side of the football, the Eagles, not so good. And we knew that the Eagles were the leading rushing team in the NFL coming into this game. That would be their only way of winning. That's basically their only method of winning. You don't want to see Jalen Hurts throw the ball 43 times like he did in this game. He only completed 23 of those passes, a touchdown, 2 interceptions. They had no running game whatsoever out of Boston Scott or Miles Sanders. They just weren't able to get it going against that D-line. And, the Eagles, their ceiling it seemed like we saw what their ceiling is this past Saturday. And it seemed like they are not going to be able to win a Super Bowl ever playing this style of football. And I just felt bad for, the franchise and for Jalen Hurts. I just don't think that he is the guy moving forward. What do you say?
There's a lot of things I like about Jalen Hurts. He's very tough. He's a very physical runner when he's out of sight of the pocket. He certainly wants to make his presence known when he's on the field. He's scored some touchdowns this season. We've seen him. This is like more of a roller coaster. Prior to losing against Atlanta earlier this year, they were losers of 3 in a row. They had won at Carolina, which is not a big surprise. Carolina is nowhere near as strong of a player on any facet, considering they were playing quarterback by committee between Sam Darnold and Cam Newton, which is just absolutely horrific. And that's a whole other topic for another time. But you got to look at the way Philadelphia has been playing. Jalen Hurts with Miles Sanders, he had a slight twist to his right arm, his right wrist, holding the rock. That seemed to be kind of an issue, but he put some more padding on, so when he does land, it's not that big of a deal. So it's more about what Jalen Hurts is going to do moving forward, and whether or not Sirianni is going to find a way to put him in position to win. Yes, they're going to need a couple wide receivers. They lost Rager. They lost a few key guys in that wide receiving core. They need to get back to that. How they would even let Zach Ertz go from that is just absolutely mind-blowing. And I'm still
and that would have helped in the passing
day.
game with Jalen Hurts. His best friend is a tight end. And
that would be the guy, would have been the guy. Unfortunately, he ended up going to Arizona, losing in Arizona. But they were just, a day apart, separation, maybe 3 days apart. They certainly weren't born 3 days apart, but they lost a few days apart. Yeah. Jalen Hurts can be that guy moving forward. I think it has to do with mechanics, being outside of the pocket, learning when to throw and when to just throw it away instead of trying to force things that aren't there. But without those weapons, they're one-dimensional. They run first. You can run all the play action you want. Maybe a little dink and duck if you put Miles Sanders in some type of wide receiver grouping, or some type of slant receiver option, something like that could give this team, this Eagles team, who has been hurting themselves offensively the entire season without having those weapons, go into the draft, maybe even free agency. Would not surprise me whatsoever to see them dive into that free agency pool and pick a couple guys, which are called low-hanging fruit, as those that know. If not, acquire some guys, develop them from a wide receiver, maybe some tight ends. There's some great college guys coming out, especially out of the SEC, as we know, is absolutely a monster between Alabama and Georgia. Lots of other teams. LSU is a part of the SEC as well. So I don't know. Jalen Hurts is a guy. I'd like to think that he is, but I just haven't seen him turn that corner yet.
Yeah, and I root for Jalen Hurts because of all the adversity that he's been through in college, and being benched by Tua, and then going on to Oklahoma City, or going on to Oklahoma, being a Heisman Trophy candidate, and then sitting behind Carson Wentz. I root for him. He's got a great story, but ultimately, I just feel like he has to develop more in the passing game. I think they need to play more of a style like Baltimore if they're going to keep him moving forward, and get the tight end position assured on both sides so that he has some security blankets, and then they've got to get better defensively. But right now, I just don't think that he's the guy if they're going to play this style of football, and they're not going to get some more weapons around him. But we'll see. We'll see. I root for the guy. Now, we are Go Long Live. I am Barry Long II. He is Rudy Reyes. Glenda Parks says, thank you for sharing this. Thank you, Glenda, for tuning in. We appreciate it. And now, right now, they don't pick these awards yet. But I just wanted to kind of gauge where you were right now with this, Rudy Reyes. Who do you have as your current NFL Coach of the Year?
It's really tough. I've bounced off a couple names inside of my head, and there's a few candidates that I'd like to kind of give props to, and I think these are three particular head coaches that have dealt with the losses of running backs, wide receivers, main core starter guys who seemingly are the ones who make this well-oiled machine work that much more efficiently. So at this juncture, it's going to be I'd say two right off the top. Mike Vrabel, head coach of the Tennessee Titans, certainly a guy that deserves to be talked about, have that discussion for as one of the coaches of the year. The other gentleman, clearly, who also is the only and current African-American coach in the NFL, and that's Mike Tomlin, because he also has dealt with a lot of injuries, a lot of core issues. But his mindset, his attitude, his demeanor, he's such a cool character, and he's calm under pressure. And that's just one of those things that Mike Tomlin does. That's what he brings. That's why he's never had a losing season in Pittsburgh. So I'm going to leave it at that. I just think that there's a lot of other great candidates, but right now those are the top two that I believe will at least be in the conversation. Who are yours?
I'll throw out Mike Vrabel as one of my top because just the adversity is losing Derrick Henry and still sticking with that run game mentality. They haven't changed their identity at all. Dealing with the injuries with AJ Brown and with Julio Jones. And just the way that they come ready to play hard, and they play physical. They're usually the more physical game on Sundays, and they really have that mentality that Mike Vrabel has, and they've taken on that persona. So I do like Mike Vrabel at 12-5 this season, but I like Matt LaFleur as well. I think Matt LaFleur being the primary play caller He's really had to adjust to a lot of the outside noise that's been going on with the Packers, whether it was the Aaron Rodgers issues with the front office or whether it was him lying about the COVID test or the vaccine. And then dealing with all the injuries on the O-line. I mean, not having Bakhtiari for most of the season, losing their probably most versatile offensive lineman in Elton Jenkins, and having to plug and play here. I just think that Matt LaFleur is certainly should be up there as well. And let's not forget about Andy Reid. Andy Reid, they've had to adjust the way that they play offensively. And I mean, earlier on in the season when they were 1-4, everybody was throwing Kansas City under the bus. And Patrick Mahomes had to learn this season how to be more patient, how to dink and dunk more so than throw it way down the field. And I think that a lot of that came from coaching. So I think Andy Reid should definitely be in that conversation as well. Now, let's move on to MVP. Because we don't have very much time, and we still want to talk about Kyrie Irving coming up here shortly. But let's talk about the MVP. Who is your current NFL MVP right now, Rudy Reyes?
Right now, when I look at the types of MVPs, when someone thinks of most valuable player, it should be about the most valuable position as well, not just a player, because the position of the most expensive, higher price, the highest paid price guy is the quarterback, right? So we think of the quarterbacks, we think of these guys. Tom Brady's out there, Aaron Rodgers is out there. You have guys that aren't really being discussed on the defensive side of the ball for basically any team, or even wide receivers, defensive linemen, guys like that. Most valuable position player, not just MVP. So there are a few guys that really kind of stand out to me. I got to go with the hometown Steeler boy, Cam Hayward.
So hold on. So let's get this right. For Coach of the Year, you picked Mike Tomlin, and then
he's just
Steeler
on that
fan
list
all the way, man.
He's on that list. I'm just calling it like it is. Look at his record.
I love it.
Just look at Coach Tomlin's record. He's never won it. He's never been. There's never been conversations about it,
which is ridiculous to me.
Exactly. I don't understand that either. But
his worst season was what, 8-8?
There is, but still 500. Still 500.
Man. Still 500, man.
Still 500. But you have guys guys who contribute to the communities, the ones that make a difference in other people's lives, that it's not just about them. There are so many stories about these guys, and I'll be able to share some of those at Super Bowl 56 at SoFi Stadium when I'm there next month. So
for sure.
a lot of stories to tell, a lot of guys who deserve it, but unfortunately there can only be one. And we don't know who that's going to be yet, but we're going to find out.
All right, for my MVP right now, of course, I've got to go with Aaron Rodgers. I mean, just the way that he's been dealing with, just the adversity and all the stuff and all the distractions. He's only thrown 4 interceptions to 37 touchdowns. He's
but Aaron Rodgers has caused some of those distractions.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Based on wordplay. Based on wordplay, because he said this or he said that, but he didn't really say that, or did he say that, or how did he say it?
And his weekly appearances on Pat McAfee show do not help at all.
They actually hurt his cause. I would not vote for Aaron Rodgers to save my life.
Or Tom Brady.
Is who would you vote for? Who's the most viable candidate, Barry?
All right. I like Tom Brady. Because of the numbers that he's put up, over 5,000 yards with all the distractions that he hasn't caused. I like Tom Brady, but I also, if I were to go like just a regular position player, because I feel like the same way as you do, it's a very biased MVP award because it's always a quarterback, and but I like Cooper Kupp, what Cooper Kupp has done this season.
Yes.
Winning that Triple Crown and leading the receiving yards, catches, and touchdowns. I just think that, just him being a beast and just him, developing that quick chemistry with Matt Stafford and playing alongside a guy like Odell Beckham and still being the best. I just feel like Cooper Kupp would be my pick if I could pick, a guy for the MVP.
Great pick.
Thank you.
Love Cooper Kupp.
Me too.
Fantastic.
I love him as well. Now, real quick, let's talk about Kyrie Irving. Kyrie Irving, we found out that Kevin Durant is now going to be out 4 to 6 weeks with an MCL sprain. Kyrie is still refusing to get vaccinated despite the Nets needing him for home games. Now, what do you feel about Kyrie Irving? Because last night in a loss to the Cavaliers, he dropped 27. He had 9 assists and 7 rebounds. They could really use those numbers at home. And they're going to, 4 to 6 weeks is a long time. And they could easily fall down in the standings. Do you feel like they should get rid of Kyrie Irving? Should they trade him?
They should absolutely trade him. This guy refuses to conform to what he needs to do, and that's to be a team player. Kyrie Irving has been about Kyrie Irving. There's been no reason whatsoever why he hasn't gotten the shot. He hasn't claimed religious preference. He hasn't claimed that he's allergic to needles. He hasn't claimed that maybe he had to give his dog a shot first. I mean, there's absolutely nothing legitimate about him telling others that he has no business taking these shots. These are for his benefit. So if he wants to be more than a part-time cashier at Starbucks, he's going to get the shot and get on the court and ball out like everybody knows that he can.
Yeah.
And he obviously doesn't think that highly of being secure physically from a vaccination standpoint and to protect those around him from a vaccination standpoint. So if they were going to do anything before the trade deadline, get rid of Kyrie Irving and get somebody in there who wants to ball out, because Kyrie is not that guy. Bounce Kyrie out like a basketball.
I agree, man. I'm just so sick and tired of Kyrie Irving and all his antics. It's at first it was like, man, Kyrie's just being Kyrie, and it was a little bit, with the earth is flat thing. I was like, all right, maybe he's a little off his rocker, but it's Kyrie. But it just seems like the whole missing time because of just personal reasons and just stuff like that. It's just gonna get in the way of what the ultimate goal is. And I feel like Kevin Durant, went to Brooklyn knowing that Kyrie was going to go there, hoping and betting on him being there, being available to play. And I feel like he's letting him down. He's letting down the whole organization and letting down James Harden and putting so much on James Harden's shoulders moving forward if KD is going to be hurt and he's going to be the only available superstar to play at home. So, yeah, I say get rid of Kyrie Irving, man. Get what you can and get him to a team where he can play away and home games. And the only time that he won't be able to play is when he's in the state of New York. But get rid of this guy. I say you give him an ultimatum, get vaxxed, or goodbye.
Exactly. And take their first flight out somewhere else, and make sure when you do get someone in return or a couple of guys, maybe a few draft picks, make sure they're all vaccinated first.
Yes. Great point. All right, real quick, let's get to our meme of the day. Now, my cousins are from Baltimore. My cousin Tavon sent me this yesterday. It went with the one that we had yesterday, but they made a new one. They made a Steelers edition of Nacho Year, extra salty. I love it. I just love the internet, man. The internet is great. Real quick, Rudy, let them know where they can find you at, boss.
You can find me at Rudog Reyes on Twitter. You can go to Facebook, find me on Facebook, really. Go to LinkedIn. You can find me there as well. And I'm not hard to find, just like Tupac.
Just like Tupac. And my name is Barry Long. The second on Facebook, you can find me at Radio Barry Long on Twitter or BarryLong_2 on IG. Remember, stay focused, stay motivated, stay inspired. And remember, you're capable of doing anything, so go out and do it. We will see you tomorrow. Bye.
Get her done.